JT Shaver here with New Layer, and in this video I want to show you what I consider to be some truly groundbreaking lights from a brand you'd least expect. It's been a while since my last light review, but there's no way I could let these slip by because honestly I've never seen anything like this. I'm talking about the Anglerfish series of lights from iFootage, and apart from the many other things there are to love about these lights, the main selling point is the absolutely insane color accuracy. It's to the point where the next best light I've ever tested doesn't even come close in some of the metrics used to test color accuracy. I'm really excited to show you the numbers, but first I want to go over the design and functionality of these lights. As a first offering, iFootage has developed the 60, 220, and 320DN, which are designed to compete with other 60, 200, and 300 watt lights. The actual wattage varies when you account for the fans and other electronics, but these lights are geared to compete with the traditional 60, 200, and 300 watt LEDs. I've got some other iFootage equipment like the Gazelle Uprise tripod, which I'm using right now, and the Spider Crab's magic arms, which are top notch, and they're some of my favorite things in my studio. The Anglerfish lights follow in the same footsteps, being made of metal and high quality plastics, without being over-engineered and weighing more than they actually have to. These do not feel like budget lights at all, and they just feel higher quality than their price point might suggest. If you've seen my other videos, you know I'm a huge sucker for high quality carrying cases, and iFootage did a great job with these as well. The cases for these lights use high quality materials and high density foam to keep everything protected and packed tightly, so nothing's going to move around no matter how rough you are when you're transporting these lights. The 60DN in particular has some undeniable similarities to other small lights like the Nanlite Forza 60. It's extremely compact and uses a non-Bowens modifier mount. In fact, it's the same exact mini Bowens style modifier mount that the Forza 60 uses itself. So if you already have some modifiers for your Forza 60 lights, they'll work natively with the 60DN as well. Having a non-native Bowens mount has always been a point of contention with these ultra-compact lights because you either have to buy the native modifiers or use a Bowens adapter to use your Bowens mount modifiers. iFootage does have a Bowens mount adapter, but I did notice when I attached it to the light there's a little bit of play. I did try my best to make it come off without pressing the release button to no avail, so it's not really a functional issue, but I thought I'd mention it anyways. And just to be clear, the 220DN and 320DN do have native Bowens mount, as you would expect. There are some accessories that make the 60DN super flexible, but I think the most important one is the battery handle. The 60DN can actually be powered via USB-C, the traditional AC adapter, or through V-mount or NPF batteries. Most battery handles like this use NPF batteries by default, but this one uses V-mount batteries. I much prefer the V-mount style because then you only need one battery instead of having to install and remove two smaller NPF batteries. So it's just less pieces and saves you a little setup time, and you can get some really high capacity small V-mount batteries that'll last a long time. Keep in mind you can buy an NPF battery plate and use NPF batteries with this as well. The controls for the 60DN are on the back of the head unit itself, but the 220 and 320DN combine the AC adapter and controls into an external ballast. You can hang the ballast from the included mounting strap, which has this little cool slip tightening piece so it's extra secure. They also have a 1/4-20 threaded hole on the back so you can mount them some other way, including with the Spider Crab magic arms. These lights are all daylight balanced and can be adjusted in increments of just 0.1%, which is really useful in delicate lighting scenarios. Pressing the dim or intensity buttons helps you jump between presets of 20% brightness, and the faster you turn the knobs or dials, the faster the brightness increases. Lastly, a quick press of the power button will turn the lamp off while leaving the actual light unit on. This helps conserve your settings and prolong the LED life, and allows you to control these lights from your phone without having to go to the back of them and turn them on and off again. The fan noise on all these lights is very good, with the 60DN being slightly quieter than its older siblings, and if you need to, you can turn these lights into silent mode. In silent mode, the 60DN is limited to 50% of its maximum brightness, and the 220 and 320DN are limited to 6% of their maximum brightness. The 60 and 220DN uses a single point mounting yoke, while the 320DN uses a sturdier U-shaped mounting yoke. The 60 and 320DN have high quality adjustable tightening handles, while the 220DN just has a standard tightening handle. It's kind of odd that that light specifically doesn't have the same semi-ratcheting tightening handle as the other two lights, but neither the 220 or 320 had any sagging issues in my testing. Like I said earlier, the 60DN pairs best with the native modifiers, Or if you are using the Bowens adapter, I would stick with a 36-inch or smaller softbox. Anything bigger or heavier and you might run into issues or just have to really crank things down to keep them from moving. All three of these lights have the same 8 customizable special effects, which just makes them more useful than your typical generic effects. They also all have 4 different dimming curves to choose from, so if you're someone that needs to adjust the brightness of your lights while you're recording, this is a great feature to have to seamlessly adjust the brightness. Using the iFootage Lumen app, you can easily control these lights from your phone or mobile device. It also adds some extra features like grouping or syncing the lights to music using your phone's microphone. Even though the app was in beta during my testing, I had no issues quickly connecting to the lights and everything worked perfectly. There's no USB ports on these lights to upgrade the firmware because you do that wirelessly through the app, which I was able to successfully do the first time within seconds. One other thing to note is that the 2 bigger lights have a DMX port on the control ballast to give you another remote control option. Each light has the same options and functionality, but the 2 bigger lights are just quicker and easier to adjust because they have more buttons on the ballast compared to just 2 on the head unit of the 60DN. The cables going from the wall into the ballasts and from the ballasts into the lights are all locking cables, so they're really secure. One small difference you might never notice is that the cable going from the ballast into the lights on the 220DN is a 4-pin cable, and on the 320DN it's a 5-pin cable. So just a small detail to keep in mind if you plan to buy both lights and were wondering if those cables were interchangeable. With all that said, let's get to the really important stuff and see just how color accurate and bright these lights are. I tested all 3 with my Sekonic C800 and got the following results. Like I said earlier, all 3 of these lights are advertised as having a 5600 Kelvin color temperature, and I got 5343, 5468, and 5457 Kelvin for the 60, 220, and 320DN respectively. As far as brightness goes, I measured these lights at 3380 lux, 10200 lux, and 12,700 lux. At ISO 400 and 1/50th of a second shutter speed, that's the equivalent of f10, f18, and f20 from 1 meter using the light's bare bulb. This is essentially the same brightness as other 60, 200, and 300 watt lights, so not necessarily a selling point, but it's really nice to know that these lights don't sacrifice brightness in lieu of color accuracy. The main thing to keep in mind here is that the 220DN is about 1 2/3 stops brighter than the 60DN, while the 320DN is only 1/3 stop brighter than the 220DN. So the brightness difference between the 2 larger lights is not very big, although you do get some other benefits with the 320, like the U-shaped mounting yoke. 5500 Kelvin is really the ideal daylight standard, so the 2 bigger lights are essentially as good as it gets. The 60DN is slightly farther off, but completely within an acceptable range, especially for budget-oriented lights in the 60 watt range. And to be honest, unless it's 400 or 500 Kelvin or more off, I think the CCT is the least important color accuracy measurement. I got color correction numbers of 0.2 green, 0.0, and 0.4 green, meaning on average, all 3 of these lights are nearly perfectly neutral when it comes to green-magenta tint, and they're so close to each other that you'd have no issues whatsoever using them together. All 3 lights are right around 98 CRI, but the more interesting things show up when we look at the individual R values. Every other light I've ever tested has at least 2 or 3 individual R values that are significantly lower than the others, meaning they don't render those colors as accurately. Sometimes, even on high quality lights, individual R values can drop into the mid or even low 80s. I have no clue how iFootage did it, but every single individual R value is in the upper 90s for these lights, which is more than you could ever ask for. I don't normally talk about the TM30 measurements of lights in my videos, but these are just too good not to mention. So for those of you that are familiar with how that works, these lights have an RF of 97 and an RG between 100 and 102, which are the best numbers I've ever tested. Most importantly, in my opinion, is the SSI, which for the absolute best daylight balanced LEDs typically falls somewhere between 73 or 74, with a few exceptions in the 75 range. The most mind-blowing discovery I made when testing these lights is that all 3 had a daylight SSI of 83. Now, a lot of tungsten balanced lights will have an SSI above 80 in the 83 range, but I have never come across a daylight balanced LED anywhere near the 80s, and definitely not up to 83. Most other daylight LEDs have a more prominent spike in the blue colors of the color spectrum. iFootage has been able to reduce that to drastically improve the overall color accuracy of all the Anglerfish lights. If you want to see all the brightness and color accuracy measurements I got for these lights, I'll have a link in the description to my light comparison tool. It uses real-world measurements instead of manufacturer-provided specs. That way you can more fairly compare lights from any brand. Another quick thing I wanted to mention is the HL1 C4 Handy Light RGB pocket light. There's a seemingly infinite number of generic RGB pocket lights out there, but this one has some nice high-end features like focusing lenses in front of the LEDs, making it exceptionally bright for its size. Besides being magnetic itself, it also has a magnetic diffusion panel on the front, and it has green magenta tint control, which is very rare for a light this size. It also works with the iFootage Lumen app, making it the perfect companion for the bigger COB lights. And the C4 RGB pocket light is only $49, which is extremely cheap for a light this good. The pricing that I've seen so far for the Anglerfish lights makes them an insanely good value in my opinion. Granted, different kits from different brands include different accessories, so make sure you check and see exactly what you're getting before you make a decision. A lot of companies try to break into the LED lighting space with something decent but generic, so I think that's why I was so impressed. The iFootage Anglerfish lights are definitely not an afterthought or just some cash grab in the LED lighting space. This is a very well developed and complete ecosystem of lights at great prices, with even more options coming in the future. So what do you think? Before you go, leave a comment and let me know if these lights are as intriguing to you as they were to me, or if they're not as compelling at first glance as they might seem. Links are in the description if you want to check these lights out further. That's it for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.